Hello everyone, I'm Takao from Japan. So now, Aicha will start her presentation on Japanese language and culture. Enjoy! 皆さんこんにちは。これから愛ちゃが日本語と日本の文化についてのプレゼンを始めます。どうぞ楽しんでいってください。
こんにちは皆さん、私はAichaです。よろしくお願いします。Hello everyone, my name is Aicha and today I'm going to talk about the culture and language of Japan. So first of all, let's check the origin of the language. The origin of Japanese is in considerable dispute among linguists. Evidence has been offered for a number of sources, such as Uralo-Altic, Polynesian, and Chinese, among others. Of these, Japanese is most widely believed to be connected to the Uralo-Altic family, which includes Turkish, Mongolian, Manchu, and Korean. Now let's check the writing system. Japanese has an extremely complicated writing system, consisting of two sets of phonetic syllabaries, with approximately 50 syllables in each, and thousands of Chinese characters called kanji. The adoption of Chinese characters during the 6th to 9th centuries AD was the most important event in the development of the language. By the 12th century, the syllabic writing systems, hiragana and katakana, were created out of kanji, providing the Japanese new freedom in writing their native language. Today, Japanese is written with a mixture of the three, kanji, hiragana, and katakana. Like any other language, Japanese also includes some other words from other languages. Since the middle 18th century, the Japanese have adopted a huge amount of gairaigo, which means foreign words mainly from English. Of course, they're not only taken from English, there are also a few words from Portuguese, Dutch, and Spanish. Now let's check the dialects. Although Japan is a relatively small country, it has a surprisingly large number of dialects, differing from each other in pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary. There is a main distinction between the different Japanese dialects. They are divided into two major types, the Tokyo type and the Kyoto Osaka type. Before I give the examples of the dialects, I would like to talk about the standard Japanese. From that, it is considered standard is called Hyojion-go, standard Japanese, or Kyosu-go, common language. Today, it is the form taught in schools, used on television, and official communication. Now, let's check the 5 major Japanese dialects. First of all, we have Hakata-ban, which is spoken in and around Fukuoka City. Lately, the dialect is used in regional news along with standard Japanese. Osaka-ban, more commonly known as part of the Kansai dialects, is spoken in the Kansai region. In this area, almost everyone is speaking a dialect. Hiroshima-ban. Back in the 1974, there was a movie called Yakuza. The movie used the dialect native to the Chugoku region. And after that, with the influence of the movie, with the effect of the movie, everyone started to recognize this dialect even more. Kyoto-ban. Part of the Kansai dialect, Kyoto-ban along with the Osaka-ban are called the Kamigata dialects. The Kyoto-ban, the traditional dialect of Kyoto, is known for its softness and politeness due to its connection with the geisha culture. It's sometimes considered as feminine and elegant. And lastly, Nagoya-ban. The dialect is a mixture of both Eastern and Western Japanese dialects due to the geographical position of Nagoya. Let's take the languages of Japan. Most of you might think that in Japan, people are all talking in Japanese. Well, the majority surely speaks in standard Japanese, but it also changes region to region. For example, they use Japanese dialects, Amyomashima, Kunigami, Miyako, Okinawan, Yaeyama, Yonoguni. And there's a minority who speaks Bonan English, Japanese English, Matagi, Nilk, Orog, Tanka, Zainichi, Korean. And there's immigrant parts who speaks Chinese, Korean, Mongolian, Portuguese, Spanish, Thai, and Vietnamese. Let's check the phonology of Japanese. The phonology of Japanese features about 15 consonant phonemes. The cross-linguistic, the typical five-vowel system of A, I, U, E, O, and a relatively simple phonetic distribution of phonemes allowing two consonant clusters. How do people communicate in Japan? Let's check the verbal part. Indirect communication. Japanese people are generally indirect communicators. They may be ambiguous when answering questions as a way to maintain harmony, prevent a loss of face, or out of politeness. People are often attentive to nonverbal cues such as body language, posture, expressions, and tone of voice as a way to draw meaning from a conversation. And for the disagreements that must be discussed are usually done in private and a later time. Let's take the refusals. As an indirect communicators, Japanese people often avoid direct refusals or negative responses. When refusing, they may show hesitation before replying with an ambiguous response. For example, someone may respond to a request with "kentashimasu," meaning "I will consider it," even if the speaker does not intend to consider the proposal. Silence. Interrupting someone who is talking is generally considered impolite. This means that many Japanese tend to remain silent during a conversation until there's an opening to speak. Sometimes silence is intentional to allow people to think about the discussion. Silence is often considered as a reflecting of politeness and respect. Interjections. Interjections, auzuchi, are very common in Japanese communication. They are not understood as an interruption, but rather indicate to the speaker that their counterpart is actively listening. Auzuchi are particularly important in situations where people cannot use nonverbal clues, such as speaking on the phone. There are different types of interjections depending on the context of the conversations. One type of interjection indicates agreement and includes the sounds on, ne, and e, and phrases such as hi, so desu ne, and sugoi. Interjections of agreement are usually accompanied by a nod. Another common type of interjection indicates surprise and includes the sound e and the phrase honto desu ka? The phrase majika, commonly used but only in casual contexts. Compliments. Humbleness is a common value in Japanese culture. As a result, there's a general tendency for people to politely deflect compliments. Excessive complimenting may cause embarrassment. Respectful speech, keigo. The Japanese language has a true grammatical system to express different levels of politeness, respect, and formality. This is known as keigo. There are three general categories for respectful speech, each used in different situations and employ different word choices and ways of communications. And now let's check the three types of these respectful speech. First, we have senkeigo, which refers to respectful language, and it is used to demonstrate respect towards the other person. This type of speech is often used when speaking to superiors and tends to include a lot of polite expressions. Kensengo refers to humble language, used to deprecate oneself or other people in the same group. In this kind of speech, people tend to drop honorific titles to show humility. Seinego refers to polite language, which is more general and can be used to refer other people or oneself. This kind of language does not convey any particular kind of respect or humility to oneself or others. Polite language is also often used among acquaintances. Now let's check the nonverbal conversations. First of all, we have physical contact. Minimal physical contact is preferred. People tend to avoid touching others unless it is unavoidable, like in a crowded public place. Public displays of physical affection among opposite genders is uncommon. However, affectionate and friendly contact such as hugging and hand-holding or walking arm to arm is quite common among friends of the same gender. Personal space. Attitudes towards space are often based on a distinction between public and private spaces. For instance, bodies are pressed together without comments in crowded public spaces, such as a busy mall or public transportation. Meanwhile, bodily contact is generally kept to minimum in private settings. Where possible, people will maintain distance from one another. Standing next to friends or family, people usually stand an arm length apart. This distance is further among acquaintances. Eye contact. Eye contact is an important aspect of nonverbal communication in Japan. Indirect eye contact is the norm, as direct eye contact may be interpreted as intimidating. Indirect eye contact is particularly common when speaking to elder or someone higher ranking to demonstrate respect. Usually people will look at another stakeholder. Indirect eye contact is particularly common when speaking to elder or someone higher ranking to demonstrate respect. Usually people will look at another part of someone's face, such as their chin. Bowing. Bowing is common throughout Japan and is often used as a gesture to mark certain emotions, such as showing gratitude, remorse, or reverence. The ethic of bowing contains many intricate rules that depend on factors such as the context, social status, and age of the person. Gesturing. There are a number of other common gestures that may be used while speaking. For instance, a common gesture used when someone is embarrassed is to raise one hand and place it behind the back of the head. Another gesture used to indicate a light-hearted disagreement is to wave both hands in front of the body or face. This gesture is also sometimes used as a way to indirectly disagree or refuse something. Beckoning. In Japan, people usually beckon by placing the palm of the hand to the ground and waving their fingers towards their body. However, it is improper to beckon someone socially superior in this manner, such as one's boss. Pointing. Pointing with the finger is considered rude. Instead, people in Japan hold out their hand and gently gesture towards the person, location, or object. Counting. When counting with their fingers, Japanese usually start with an open palm and close the finger to symbolize a number. For example, the number 1 is represented when the thumb is closed and other fingers are open. Similarly, a closed fist represents the number 5. However, the opposite style of counting where the number of fingers held up reflects the number symbolized is becoming more common. Nodding. It is common for people to nod during conversation to indicate they are listening or as a sign of acknowledgement. Nodding is a gesture of politeness and does not necessarily imply agreement. Expressing emotions. Displaying intense emotion is usually avoided in Japanese communication. This is especially the case in formal situations such as in the workplace or at school. People tend to avoid overt and intense displays of anger to preserve face social status, which can play a role in how intensively emotions are expressed. Feet. It is considered rude for someone to display the soles of their feet, use their feet to move something, point their feet towards someone, or put their foot on furniture. Well, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.